The second thing I tell people is to go help somebody, because helping is healing and the secret to living is giving. And if you want to find purpose and meaning in life again, to first go find someone to help.
Hi, and welcome to Don't Drink to Feed podcast. This podcast is all about you and all the courageous, driven women like you. We are here to inspire, to empower, to share, and to embrace one another. We will be talking with women from different backgrounds and careers about love, family, friendship, their wins and falls, and what it took for them to live the life they love. I am your host, Claudia Noriega-Bernstein, and I am so happy you're here today. Hi, everyone. Today we're talking about something every human being will experience, yet almost no one teaches us how to understand: grief. Most people think grief only belongs to death, but grief also lives in transition, in endings, in the loss of dreams, relationships, identities, and versions of life that once felt real. And there are many parts of grief that remain unspoken: the confusion, the waves of motion, the moments when we laugh and cry in the same time. The waves, grief shapes who we are. So today's conversation is about understanding those deeper layers of grief and learning how to live with it, not by fixing it, but by making space for it. I am honored to have Toni Filipone, grief educator and advocate, here with us to explore this important and deeply human experience. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you for having me, Claudia. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
This is something that people usually don't want to talk about. And to share a little bit, and before you share your story, I am grieving right now my best friend that passed away last week. And this wasn't something that I haven't even gone to social media to talk about it, because I don't feel I'm ready to talk about. I feel very protective of my state of mind, and I don't want to expose that feeling that I have. So I think it's a road that not everybody travel the same way. Would you agree with that?
A couple things. I always say grief is unique as your fingerprint, and everybody is going to experience it and explore it and navigate it completely differently. And you talked about an important topic. Grief is the number one requested topic, but yet it's the one topic nobody wants to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody's different, because our relationship to the person, our conditioning of what it means and how it shapes our identity and role is different. So you can have a family, 5 siblings that all lose a mother, and they'll all going to experience the grief of that mother differently because of their relationship to the person. Grief is as unique as everyone's fingertip, and you not being ready to talk about or even process such acute grief, by the way, my heart is heavy for you. I didn't know that going into this conversation, that your brain is in the shock portion of grief, where you understand it cognitively that the loss occurred, because that's in your heart, but we grieve with our brain, our mind, and our heart. So your heart feels the absence, but your brain and your mind haven't aligned yet. And that's the sort of the denial part of grief. And I always say the denial part of grief gets a bad rap. We want to embrace that, because if we were to feel the pain all at once, we'd be on the floor and we'd be the ones not getting back up. So your brain's probably protecting you just a little bit right now, I would think.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And sometimes we push it away. It's like, I don't want to think about it. I want to keep on going with my life, or I want to put happy music, or I want to get distracted and busy so I don't go into my feelings. And I did that for years. I pushed my feelings down. And then one day my body said, guess what? You're sick, because we are carrying all these feelings and we don't know what to do with it. So we are just going to get you sick.
It'll force you to face what you have to face. I always say, people say, what do I do with my grief? You're first and foremost, our grief needs to be seen, witnessed, and tended to. And when we push it down, it doesn't go away. Okay. Just because you ignore it doesn't mean it goes away, and it will store somewhere emotionally in you, which typically most often turns into some sort of physical disease. Did you ever hear stories where people say, I lost my best friend, but then all of the memories of like my grandmother who died or this that died came up? because they
Yeah.
have all of these old wounds. And I
Hmm.
always say you have to turn wounds into a scar. If I have a wound on my arm, if I have an open wound in my arm and I just try to ignore it, maybe for a little bit it'll scab up, flake off, scab off, but eventually that wound is going to turn into an infection and it's
Hmm.
going to take over my entire body. Where in the moment, tending to the wound may be painful, but the goal is to turn it into a scar. And sure,
Hmm.
on a rainy day, we may feel it. But if we keep an open wound, it's just going to start affecting other areas in our life. But people are so afraid of the pain that they do things that feel good in the moment. Like you, I'm just going to stay busy because what you
Hmm.
me feel, and if I don't focus on this, I won't feel it. So we do
Right.
things that feel good in the moment, but come with long-term side effects, except for doing things that are harder in the moment that come with long-term benefits. And I always say, dealing with grief is hard. It's painful, but wait until you get the bill for not facing your grief. That's when pain turns to suffering. And it can manifest, like you said, in physical manifestation where people get sick, physically
Hmm.
sick, for sure.
What do you think is something about grief that most people never really say out loud?
I think people are terrified of death. And
Mm.
our society has created this culture. I call it that we live in a grief illiterate society, that we
Mhm.
think grief is death, but grief is really any change we don't want. And I think when people talk about grief, we were taught
Mhm.
in the 80s, right? With this whole like affirmation, don't say out loud what you don't want.
Right.
Don't put it out in the universe. Don't this. So people stopped talking about death. We
Hmm.
actually became grief illiterate in the 80s when it was like, don't put it in the universe. And I'm like, no, no, no. You need to talk about it. You know,
Right.
our great grandparents knew how to grieve. So I think people are afraid to talk about grief because they're terrified of their own death and they're terrified of what life will look like without the person. And they're also terrified to feel the pain, that they think that if they go back to that moment, that they're going to have to relive it. And so they
Right.
just don't talk about it. And we're also taught to just stiffen our upper lip. And that sounds so cliche. It's such hyperbole, but we're taught that. It's like, because we're so grief illiterate, and we've been for the past 46 years, people
Hmm.
are like, look, death happens. This happens. Move on. But do you want to know
They
something?
normalize it.
They normalize hiding it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't normalize processing it. And so
Hmm.
people walk around mentally, physically sick. They self medicate. The number one cause of addiction, we know this is conclusive. Most people, most people in rehab are dealing with unresolved grief and they're self medicating things that happen in their childhood, things like this. And so they self medicate because we walked into the kitchen and we saw our mom crying and we go, "What's wrong?" And they go, "Oh, nothing. Oh, nothing." I mean, the worst thing you can say to a kid when they see you crying is nothing's wrong.
Right.
And you just taught them not to talk to you when something's wrong. And it's most always, the vast majority of it is unresolved grief. We're terrified to feel our feelings and we're terrified to talk about death because we're afraid to die.
That is so true. My kids never saw me crying when they were little. And I would go in the shower and cry. And my philosophy was, well, I'm already wet, so what the heck? I let the tears get mixed
Good
with the water.
point.
Nobody's gonna know that I'm crying. And I went to an emotional intelligence retreat, and they had a graduation. And when I stand up and spoke about my experience, I started to cry. And could not imagine the face of my children looking at me like, what did these people did to my mom that she's
Wow.
crying? And that was the beginning of my healing, really. And my biggest takeaway was being strong doesn't mean I'm not vulnerable. And I should allow myself to be vulnerable because that is part of my strength.
Yes. The courage of vulnerability.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also teaching your kids. I've tried to research it. I don't understand where crying turned into this like embarrassment, shameful, weak sort of action. Crying is a
Hmm.
kind of mourning. Okay.
Hmm.
Mourning is what we do on the outside. You can't see somebody's grief. I can walk by you on the street and
And
I
you
would
don't
have
know.
no idea that your, best friend, really good
Hmm.
friend just passed away. I would have no idea.
Hmm.
Grief. I always say grief is like a broken rib. Nobody can see it from the outside, but on the inside, every breath hurts. Mourning is what we do on the outside. So you crying would be a sign of mourning. I would see it. I would say, "Oh my gosh," I would stop and go, "Are you all right? Do you need help?" But society's created this like weakness to it. You don't want your kids to see you upset. Why? Why?
What are you modeling?
What are you modeling? If we're going to be alive on planet Earth, we're going to experience pain. So it's like, why are we trying to normalize this like tough person? Like, it's not tough. The strongest people in the world are able to show all of their emotions, but also manage them.
Mm-hmm.
Your kids could walk in the kitchen and say, Mom, what's wrong? And you can say, nothing's wrong. I was just having a moment where I was thinking about fill in the blank. Moments, Mom's okay. But that hit, I really needed to process that. You can show your feelings and still manage your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be flailing on the floor, throwing yourself on a turkey. But it's still saying, I just had a grief burst.
Yeah.
And I've realized, kids, that if you can have a grief burst, you can also have a love burst. And right now I'm just feeling a little bit of the grief. Talk about it. I'd love to talk to you about it. It's very calm.
Yeah.
It's not erratic. It's not weak. It's actually quite strong. So people they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to do it.
It's funny you say that because I ran away from my home at 17 and I moved with my grandmother. And my grandma was, oh my God, Elizabeth Taylor, John Collins, and Cher in one woman.
Oh, cool.
But oh my gosh, when I moved in with her, not to change the subject, she gave me a key of her house just in case she comes home later than me. And I'm like, okay, that's different. She said to me, and I have it in my book, 30 minutes is enough time to cry for a man. And I always took it like 30 minutes is enough time to cry for a man. But I missed the part where she's telling me, you better have a good cry and then get over it. Like, acknowledge that emotion. Cry. It's okay. Don't cry the whole day. Don't kill yourself about it.
Right.
Don't go under your blanket and ruin the rest of your life because some idiot didn't value you. But 30 minutes of a good cry, that's it. And then she used to say to me, and then put some lipstick on. You're fine. You'll survive.
I
I'm
love
like, you're ahead of your time. And I have her in my book because I learned a lot of lessons from her and the way she faced life and how she dealt with her own emotions. I didn't realize when I was younger that that's what she was telling me. Go and cry. Go and feel your feelings. Go and be emotional. Go and grieve that relationship that is never going to happen or is never going to be what you want it to be or is never going to give you what you were ready to receive. Whatever it is, but go and grieve and then get over it.
And then live.
Exactly.
Because grief and life can coexist. Take
Mm-hmm.
your moments, even if it's 30 minutes a day, even if it's 5 minutes a day. See, your grandmother, they knew how to grieve. They knew how to grieve. They knew to process it and then thrive. Process it and thrive. Because we're here alive on planet Earth. We've been given the greatest resource of all, time. And she's right. You have to process the potential of what could have been and the loss of that hope that you had or that desire, whatever it is. But you're also still here. You can still have those experiences. So we can't let grief overtake us and turn into prolonged grief disorder, where grief becomes our identity. We have to feel it and witness it, and we have to acknowledge it. Grief is very patient. It'll wait for you for decades, but I promise you, it will show up somehow and some way. But she was right. Put your lipstick on, go own it, but make sure at the end of the night when you clean your face that you look in the mirror and you process the pain that's been going on, for sure.
Yeah. And would you agree that oftentimes grief is confused or misdiagnosed with mental health?
Yeah, I think that's one of the touchiest subjects that we have in our world today. I think that somebody grieving that's going through the emotions of anger, depression, sadness, and then sort of having moments where they're okay, people are noticing, like they're misdiagnosing it as like a mania or a manic or borderline personality disorder or all these different disorders, when really anybody that's gone through deep grief understands how chaotic the process is. It's frenetic, it's chaotic, it's irritable, it's intolerable. So we're sort of going on these waves, and then doctors, and I've got nothing against medication, I'm not a medical professional, but doctors are throwing SSRIs down people's throats and giving them medications for something that they really don't need to be medicated for.
Right.
Somebody will say, I'm having anxiety since my husband died. Well, that doesn't mean you have anxiety disorder. It means that your life completely changed. You're anticipating the worst happening. Fear doesn't stop death. fear stops life. So instead of teaching people how to literally manage the part of grief that they can, they're being highly medicated, misdiagnosed for something that rationally would give you anxiety. So I think there's a lot of, I'm feeling depressed because versus I'm clinically depressed. I'm really feeling anxious because versus I have anxiety disorder. I'm like, well, you've never had anxiety in 50 years. What do you mean you've got anxiety? Like, that's not how this works. So yeah, I think that it's really important to understand. And I love a doctor and I love a good therapist. I work with tons of therapists. I love them. But what I've come to learn with all the therapists that I work with is that grief is an elective in every state. So these therapists are also not grief educated.
Mm-hmm.
And so
they're doing what the book is telling them to do.
Right. Now, therapists are starting to get on the bus and they're becoming certified grief and they're starting to understand, but it's taken a very long time. Doctors, the same thing. They are there to diagnose the symptoms, not the systems.
Mm-hmm.
So you have symptoms of chronic depression. This happened. Okay, well, here's a pill. Take it here, and that'll get you to sleep, and then this will get you to wake up, and this will calm your nerves midday. Nobody's handling their grief. Nobody's learning how to manage the emotion, rebuild identity, and all of the stuff that my company teaches. I think that grief and mental disorder and illness of the mind get misdiagnosed probably every day, more than we can imagine.
And you know that better than anybody else because you went through that. 3 years ago, you lost your partner to suicide, which is a whole different animal because sometimes, yeah, you lose somebody because they're sick and you see the process and then you see him deteriorate and getting weaker and then that person die. Or like my friend that I knew she had a condition, but still we didn't think that it was so bad that they were gonna just found her dead and we didn't expect it. But when it's suicide, it's different because you ask yourself a lot of questions. Walk us through that process. Then what you felt, what happened, how was that moment in your life?
Brutal then, brutal now. That's all I can that's how the best I sum it up. Brutal then and brutal now. There's different types of grief. And I think it's really important to understand this first. There's something called anticipatory grief. And that's when we know that somebody was diagnosed with a terminal illness, they're on hospice. We know that the death is coming. Now we grieve with our brain, our mind, two different things, and our heart. So when it's anticipatory grief, the heart still grieves the same, 100%. The mind is a little calmer. It can say, they were suffering. My uncle had pancreatic cancer. It took over. I'm really sad he's gone, but I'm glad he's not in pain anymore. And the brain isn't confused. My uncle had pancreatic cancer. It took over. We got him help and he died. So the heart hurts, but there's no confusion. It's called, and I hate this word, but it is called normal grief, anticipatory grief, pain in the heart, but there's no confusion. They got sick. They died. When it's a death by suicide or when it's a sudden death, when somebody drops dead, whether it's death by suicide or whatever it is, the brain doesn't have a file for that. So the heart immediately feels the absence. The mind is pounded with questions. It's called causation bias. Whenever we are in pain, the brain and the mind look immediately for the cause of the pain. If I put my hand on a burning stove, and the signal goes to my brain, this hurts. My brain immediately asks a question. What caused the pain? And it can say, well, Toni, you put your hand on a burning stove. If you don't want to feel that pain anymore, don't put your hand on a burning stove, which is why parents will say to little kids, well, let them touch it. That'll teach them a lesson. They'll learn not to put their hand in a socket. That's what happens. The brain scans. When it's death by suicide, our brain is scanning because you don't want to, the victim is the perpetrator. So you don't want to blame the victim. So we start to blame ourselves because the brain's saying, if you don't want to feel this pain again, what could you have done differently? So survivors of suicide start to replay, had I said I loved you one more time, had I only picked up the call, had I seen the signs, had they just told me, had they this, what if I this, what if I that, what if I this, what if I that? And the truth of the matter is, when somebody dies by suicide, it's because they have an illness of the mind. One conversation doesn't do it. What if we didn't fight that day? I say, exchange your what ifs for even if you didn't fight that day, the death would have occurred, because fights don't cause death or we'd all be dead. What if I said I loved you one more time? Even if you said I loved you one more time, because there's lots of people in the world that have never heard I loved you that aren't dead by suicide. What if I didn't give them tortilla soup? Well, even if you gave them chicken soup, the death would have occurred. So we go through the loops of what can I have done? Now, I went through terrible imposter syndrome. I was 35 years in personal development, specializing in depression and suicide. I hadn't lost one until my partner. So I felt that I had to handwrite tens of thousands of people that I've spoken to on stage and say, I'm really sorry. The information I gave you was right, but I had no idea the pain that you felt sitting in those seats. And now I know. I had no clue how much pain we could feel as a human on planet Earth. And I owe you all an apology because I came at you with the head and the mind, and the information was tried and true, but I forgot the heart. And there was no way I could have understood your pain until I went through it. And it completely shattered my identity of who I thought I was. So it's not, I did get the call and I said everything right. And I did everything right by the book, and the death still occurred. And it completely rewires how you see and identify in the world, for sure.
Wow, that's so deep. And it does make me think of so many moments in my life when I have grief and how I had grief.
Mhm.
What was the moment when you realized that grief wasn't something that you had to fix?
I remember going to my first support group. It was days after my partner died. And it was funny because I walked into the room and there was a flyer that I was speaking at that venue a week later. And I had to show up not as the speaker, but I had like a baseball hat on and a leather jacket and sunglasses. I wanted to be somebody in grief there. And I remember sitting in my first ever grief support group. And it was like a circle, just like you would sort of imagine. And I was the new one. So everybody went around the room. The facilitator had everybody go around the room, their name, who they were grieving, and how long they'd been coming to the group. And everybody was in a very heavy state, their mental state of like depression and despair. And I thought, and I was too, but I was days in. And so they've started this. The first gentleman said his name, who he was grieving, and he'd be coming for 18 years. And then it was 12 years and 11 years, 17 years, 2 years. And I was like, they're still in this like state. So it got to me and I said, hi, everybody. My name's Toni. I'm grieving my partner, death by suicide. This is my first time here. They died 5 days ago. I said, I just have a question. How have all of you changed since coming here for all of these years, some decades? And they went like this. And I said, I'm out of here. I'm out of here. I'm not going to be one of these. And I said, but I promise you in 1 year's time, I will come back and I will teach you that you're not broken. So you don't need to be fixed, but you will understand that you can grieve and live, that you don't have to live in this state. And that's when I went home and I said, no way, no way. Grief is not something to fix. We're not broken, but it is something to understand and to grow upon. Grief can make us bitter, like the group, or better. Bitter or better, we have a choice. So I don't think it's so much about fixing it than it is creating new meaning in life after loss. You have to create a purpose in the pain, because without a purpose, without a vision, we perish. And so a lot of times in grief, we lose our vision because, to your point earlier, we lose the potential of. We had a vision of marrying this person or parenting this child or this. And when that vision goes away, people have a hard time creating a new vision because they feel that they're betraying their loved one or betraying their dream or betraying what was. It's not about fixing, to me. It's about teaching people how to create new meaning in their life after loss, a new identity, a new vision, without feeling like you're turning your back on your loved one or whatever changed or was lost.
Yeah. And then you're absolutely right. Also, when you go back and think, when you know better, right? When you go back memory lane and think of the love that you would have liked to have when you were a kid, or the family you would have liked to be part of when you were a teenager or whatever. So it's not just what you lost, but it's what it could have been and you never had. And have that grief inside of us, but we never acknowledge it because we just accept it. This is the life I got and I should be grateful for whatever it is. And we pay attention only to that, because paying attention to what we didn't have make us look ungrateful, make us look selfish, make us look whatever, and we don't go there. And one of the things that I am learning in my own life, in my own experience, is that there is a lot of grief, unprocessed grief in my life. And there is a big chunk of that unprocessed grief that has to do with the things that I never had. I didn't lose those things. I just never had those things. And
Mhm.
it's okay to go there. And it's okay to want to have those things. And
Mhm.
we don't tap into that because, again, we're conditioned to think that if we go there, we're not being grateful.
And we're afraid to be judged. The
Right.
big fear that humans have is judgment, because if we're judged, we feel that we're not enough. And if we feel that we're not enough, we feel that love will be taken from us. I heard somebody once say in a seminar that you should be grateful. If we lined up everybody in the world, they said, and Susie had it the worst, you should be grateful unless you're Susie. And I stood up and I said, bullshit. Excuse me. I said, and everybody looked at me. It was 6,000 people in the room. And I went right up to the stage. I said, that's untrue. That is untrue. Gratitude does not replace desire. It is okay to be grateful that, yes, that you were born with your eyes and your ears, of course, and that you, even if it was terrible, you had a roof over your head. And yes, there's tons of people around the world that have it worse, but there's also tons that have it better. And it's okay. I used to be so jealous of people, envious of people that were born into the lucky sperm club. They were born into a $1 billion family. And the reasons, I'm like, well, how did you're a mess. And they're like, yeah, lucky sperm. And I'm like, I grew up not in a life of privilege, okay? And I used to say that. How did you get? I used to call it. How did you get in the Lucky Sperm Club? And they're like, I don't know. And I was like, working my tail off over here. My mom brings home a pizza. I think I'm a Rockefeller. I mean, we were poor. I didn't
Right.
have the resource. I didn't have anything. And I thought I used to be so mad about it. And then I said, okay, I can either dwell on what I don't have,
Mm-hmm.
I can create what I want. And it's more of that shift. I think that we are taught that if we desire more, that we're not grateful. And that just couldn't be farther than the truth. Again, I'm telling you, Claudia, it was in the early 80s, which when we sort of went into the spiritual yoga path, which I'm all about, loved it. But
Mm-hmm.
there was messages that got really sort of screwed up along the way about these positive affirmations. Let me tell you something. It's not about positive thinking. Yes, positive thinking is better than negative thinking. But if I go into a garden with weeds and I just shut
Mm-hmm.
my eyes with post-it notes and go, there are no weeds, there are no weeds, there are no weeds, there are no, that's when I open my eyes, there's still weeds. The
Right.
goal is to look at the garden, see the weeds, see that you can still have a beautiful garden, learn how to rip those suckers up and
Mm-hmm.
tend to your garden. That's the goal. I'm so grateful I have a garden, but that doesn't mean I want the weeds to overtake me and not try for more. Yeah, I think it's just society. We've lost our way in society. If you talk to somebody that's 80 years old, they knew how to do this, like your grandmother. Hi, young lady. And then you
Mm-hmm.
put lipstick on and you go rip those weeds out, rip those suckers out, and go create your garden. You got it. Do you
True.
know what I mean?
True.
She got it. She understood what
She
I'm.
and she was so present, but I always felt that she was ahead of her time because she was like I had two different grandmothers. One was the submissive, poor me, victim, everybody's a villain in my life. That was on my mom's side. And my dad's side, it was this woman that wanted more, that she knew she was meant for more and she was not gonna settle. So I love that I had that role model
Yeah.
because I knew what I didn't want, but then what do I want, right? So then I had her like, yeah, you're killing it, grandma. I love it. I
I love
want that. I wanted to say something about grief that a lot of people know in theory, but they're not really aware of it. Grief is not linear. And yes, we have different stages, but they don't always come in that order.
There's a real confusion about the 5 stages of grief. A
Mm-hmm.
real confusion. And I like to put this to rest. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who created the model of the 5 stages of grief, who is genius and is responsible for hospice. I mean, this woman was brilliant. She created the model, the 5 stages of grief, for the dying, not for the living.
Oh,
She
wow.
created it and nobody, and I'm like, wait. So when you were dying, when you were given a terminal diagnosis, you've been given 1 month to live. You
Mm-hmm.
went through this bargaining stage. Okay. If I quit smoking now, will the cancer go away? If I stop eating sugar now, will the diabetes go away? Okay, I will lose 200 pounds now. So the heart, we start to barter. That was the bargaining part.
Mm-hmm.
And this stage would move to denial. The doctors are wrong. They're looking at the wrong file. I'm not dying. I'm going to beat this. I'm going to beat it. I'm going to beat it. And some do. So then there's the denial. Then it moves to anger. My buddy Johnny's been smoking 50 years. Why didn't he get cancer and I did? Everybody else is, how about all my friends smoke? Why? What do you mean? We all eat like this. Why am I the one dying? Then the anger. Then it goes to sadness. I'm dying. Then it goes to acceptance. Okay, this is actually happening. This is when people start to clean up their affairs, start to make amends with family. They've accepted the fact that they're over. Those stages to this day are tried and true for the dying. Wow. She put out this brilliant book again in the 80s. And what happened is society took this model because of 5 stages of grief, not understanding what it should have been entitled the 5 stages of grief for the dying. And people started to say, these are the 5 stages that the living feel. That is not true at all. Now, sure, there's denial, there's anger, there's sadness, but there's also confusion, irritability, chaos, all of it. The 5 stages, the living that are grieving, we don't experience those, which is why people then say, well, they're not linear. Well, they're linear for the dying. The model is absolutely linear for the people that it's made for.
Right.
It's just not linear for us because we're not actively that we know of. Now, it doesn't mean we're not going to die today, but we don't know it, right?
We don't know it. Exactly.
Right. We don't know it. So we don't go through the stages. So no, the 5 stages of grief for the living aren't linear. And that it's not just that. There's 1,000,005 other parts of it. Stages also imply that you go from one to the other, and that you won't revisit. Very true for the dying, not for the living. We can have these grief bursts where one day we're just totally fine, laughing with friends, and we get in the car to go to the grocery store. We're in fetal position in the mozzarella cheese aisle. We're like, I don't know what happened. Yeah. That's not a part of the 5 stages of grief wave, grief burst. So I think that society has confused that model.
Wow. That's so true. And I never thought about that because I was talking to one of my daughters that had a break up with the boyfriend, and she's like, I'm grieving it and I'm in the anger stage. And I'm like, yeah, because that's what we know, that we're going to go through those stages, the denial and everything else. I wanted to ask you, somebody that is going through all this right now, like you went through all this, and I think, and this is a side note, but there is a lot of very capable people out there, coaches and therapists. There is no comparison when you talk to somebody that has walked the walk, that had felt it. If somebody comes to me and tell me, call my husband in bed with another woman, I can actually go to that person and say, I know exactly how you feel. Or my father was killed, I know exactly how you feel. Or I had a miscarriage, I know exactly how you feel. I'm not talking from a book. I'm talking from my own experience. And I think that although it's devastating what happened to you, you have those tools because you went through it, not because you read a book that told you this is the process and this is how you fix it. So if somebody's listening right now and is going through a grieving process, has lost somebody, let's not even expand to the other ways that we can grieve in life, but just has lost somebody, what would be the first step that person can take to start rebuilding a life without that person anymore in their lives?
The first step is to first witness their grief and stop trying to ignore it. To wake up every day and say, grief, you're the last person I want to talk to, but what do I need to learn today? And what do I need to know today? The second thing I tell people is to go help somebody, because helping is healing and the secret to living is giving. And if you want to find purpose and meaning in life again, to first go find someone to help. Now, I also preface that by saying if they're in early grief, which is about the first 2 years, depending on the loss, you don't need to help anybody. At this point, you have to get through the logistics and just what you have to go through, and that have to be sort of tended to, okay? But then I remind them, number one thing I say to people in early grief is to make sure every day that you find just one pocket of joy, and eventually, as you start stacking those pockets of joy without feeling guilty about it, just one little pocket, pretty soon, the pockets of joy outweigh the pockets of pain. So every day I'll say, I want you to text me one pocket of joy today. And they might say, oh, I saw somebody in the grocery store and they came up to me and told a story about my loved one and it felt so good and I felt joy. Just for a moment, I felt joy. Then I felt guilty. I said, great. We'll talk about the guilt in a minute, but you see, you had that pocket of joy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Allow that to teach you that your life can be whole again. It'll look and feel very different, but it can be whole again. Because if you can have a second of joy, that second can turn into 5 seconds, 10 seconds. So I committed from the first day when I found my partner. I said that night, I'm going to make sure I find a pocket of joy every day. And I looked around the room and there was over 100 people there to support me. And I said, okay, this is my pocket of joy today. I have all these people around me. And then it went right to anger and right to sadness and right to this. I just started stacking pockets of joy. So, number one, you've got to talk to your grief and see it. Number two, you've got to find the pockets of joy every day, even though right now the pockets of pain will outweigh it. And number three, in time, go help somebody. That will start to reshape your life. And then eventually, as we start to feel comfortable with the pockets of joy, we start to rebuild the meaning of our life. It will look very, we are split into two people. Sometimes we're split into 10 if we've had 10 major losses. And every loss
It's a reminder. It's a reminder. It's so crazy to me. I was telling my husband that, and that's what I wrote that kind of sort of poem that I show. I will share it in the notes for anybody who wants to read it. But I was telling my husband when I found out that Mercedes passed away, first of all, yes, I had a lot of guilt because she has called me a couple of days before and I didn't pick up the phone. And this is my best friend. We talk every day. I called her back and she didn't pick up. And that never happened before. So the guilt was right there. I should have picked up the phone. Maybe I would have been. But it was also selfish because she didn't kill herself. She died because of liver failure. So it was selfish because I wanted to have that more phone call conversation.
That's right. You wanted the closure.
I wanted the closure. I didn't get to have that. So I resource to the guilt. I'm gonna feel guilty because I didn't pick up the phone. And then I went in my head, well, but I was at the doctor appointment and I sent her a text message and I did call her and I started creating this evidence to make myself feel better because I didn't do whatever I was supposed to do based on I don't know whose story, but that's what I did. But then after that, this time in my life, maybe because I am in this healing journey, I really cried for 2 days. I allow myself, I stay in pajamas for the whole Sunday. I found out on Saturday because my phone rang and it was her number. And I was in the beauty salon and I picked up the phone and I said, were your ears ringing? And I wanted to say, bitch, I called you for 2 days and you didn't pick up the phone. What the heck? And it was her daughter. And one part of my brain was like total denial. She probably is in the hospital. She is not feeling good. And that's why Sistina is picking up the phone. Like total denial, right? So I go, why do you have your mom's phone? I'm scolding her. Why do you have your mom's phone? And she goes, my mom is dead. That's how she said it. My mom is dead. And I sat there with the dye in my hair in front of the mirror with Ari, which is my hairdresser and her hairdresser. So we were talking about, she hasn't called me back. And I didn't know what to say to her daughter because I didn't know what to tell myself in that moment.
You're in shock.
I was like, how, what? But what I was telling you is that I was talking to my husband, and that day that I cried the whole day, I cried for everyone that I have lost, for absolutely everyone that I have lost by death. Okay, I didn't even go deeper into the other areas, but it was like a domino effect. I was thinking about her, and then I was thinking about my dad, and then I was thinking about my stepdaughter, and then one person after another one, and it was kind of like orgasmic. I don't know if you grasp what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
It was kind of orgasmic, but also in a kinky way, was looking for more reasons to be in pain. Like I was really going deeper into the pain and looking for more things that could fit that pain that I was feeling so I can empty that container of grief that has been living inside of me. And I was thinking, I have to be so grateful for her right now because she's allowing me to grieve 59 fucking years of my life. And I was like, wow. I was in awe and I was in pain And I was back in this journey, and it was such a dark place to be, at the perfect place to be at the same time.
It's like what we call purpose in the pain. It's like you found purpose in that pain by releasing
Mm-hmm.
toxic, sort of hidden grief and trauma and everything that you've been through. She gave you that release. But the inner conflict is, it's like, yeah, wow, thank you. You gave me this beautiful release and the ability to just go so deep, but at what cost?
Yeah.
But it cost me you. And
Yeah.
so I think that she left you something very beautiful to remind you what of a best friend she was. How cool.
Mm,
Because even if you answered the phone, the death would have occurred.
I know.
And let me tell you something. I have to tell you this. This is honest. You still wouldn't have known she was going to die. So even when you talked to her that day, had you answered the phone, it wouldn't be the closure that you think it would have been.
Right.
You didn't know she was dying. You
Yeah.
would have then said, Tone, I talked to her on the phone and I didn't say this because I only said this. You would have answered the phone and said, bitch, I'm at the hairdresser. I'll call you back. Whatever it
Exactly.
was. You
Right.
didn't know she was going to die. You didn't know the death was going to occur. Closure is a myth. Okay. Even when people are with their loved ones on their deathbed, they always say to me, I forgot to say this.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to tell them this. And I'm like, tell them now. It's called a living amends. Tell them now.
Right.
They live in your hearts and you live in theirs. Tell them now. Thank her. Thank you. You left me. I know you couldn't stay. I know that if you could be here, you would.
Mm.
I know that. But thank you for your soul is still impacting my life every day. Thank you for that. Thank you. I'm listening. I'm listening.
That's beautiful. But yeah, I wanted to share something with you. When my ex-husband passed, he had a stroke,
Okay.
and I was in Peru, and we we had a very, even though he was my ex-husband for many, many years, I'm married with my husband 20 years,
Yeah.
and he was very much part of our life, and we were friends, but we had a very deep connection. I knew that I was with him in past life. I was his mother in past life, which made a lot of sense. But when I was in Peru, I was going to a wedding, and then I was gonna meet my husband to go to Colombia, and I said, I'm canceling everything. I need to come back to Las Vegas because I need to be with my kids. When I walk into the room,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw him there, I had a feeling like if he wasn't there, that's not him. Like I
Mm-hmm.
saw the body, but it was kind of like out of the body experience, kind of it. Like that's the body, but that's not him. For some
Mm-hmm.
reason, I could feel him more next to me than in that bed.
Mm-hmm.
My kids were very much in shock and sad. My middle daughter had been giving him tough love, so they were not in a good place. Although somehow I feel that when you're gonna die, you know, but you don't know. So he went and looked for her at her work and gave her a hug and told her he loves her and all that stuff. And she was mad that he had gone to the work and why, mom, why did he come and whatever. And then looking back, she's like grateful that he did that.
Yeah, of course.
But she was the one, and she's the more like me, my middle one. So I call my medium and I talk to her once a year. And I said to her, and I respect everybody's beliefs, but this is what works for me. And I told her what had happened. And she said, he called you. You have a missed call from him. And I look at my phone and I had a missed call from him. It says, you were the last person he called. And I was like, oh my God. And then I had that feeling, right? That I didn't, because I was in Peru, so the phone call dropped. So I didn't speak to him. And my daughter Isabella said to me, I want to go see Alejandra because I want to know, I want to connect with my dad somehow before he's gone. He was connected to a machine. So Isabella went, talked to her, and then she came back home. And my kids are all adults, and she was already living in her house. And she came home and she said to her sisters, this is going hard for me. My dad is already gone. He's just there for us to get familiar with the fact that he's not going to be here. He's just waiting for us to come to terms with the fact that he is no longer going to be with us, but he's not there anymore. And then he went to each of her sisters and said, my dad can hear you sing, Talia. My dad can hear you say this, Sofia. Like, how did she know these things? Because Nobody was in that room except for them. So the medium had no way to know.
Yeah.
And then he asked my middle daughter to tell my oldest daughter, which she had an incredible tight relationship with. They were two peas in a pod, same age mentally, to go and see Alejandra. And Talia said to me, I don't want to go along. I don't want to go along. I don't want to go along. Mom, please come with me because I don't like the thing. And Talia at that moment was not really aligned with her own power with this kind of things, right? She was in denial totally. I don't want to hear. I don't want to see. I don't know. But I went with her. And we sat in front of Alejandra for my daughter Talia to have a session and talk to her dad. This was after we disconnected him. And the craziest thing was that my kids made me next in time because I was always close to him and he had never give it to anybody else. So for 20 years, I was still the one making those decisions, which for the doctor was so weird. This man has been married twice after her, but then the daughters want her to make the decision. And it was a lot for me, but I didn't want my kids to have to make that decision. So I took that. So I'm sitting there with the medium and kind of to the side so my daughter can have that session with her. Alejandra goes, I have somebody here, but she wants to talk to you, Claudia. And I'm like, to me, no. And Talia's looking at me like, this is my session. Like, what the heck? She was like, well, who wants to talk to you, right? And she goes, he said that his name is Carly. And the funny thing is that my daughter's last name is Trenta Carlini, and I used to call him Carly. So he came, again, there was no way for her to know this, right? So he came not as Talia's father, but as my ex-husband to her session. And he said, he just wants you to know that you're doing an amazing job.
Beautiful.
And I was like, oh, God. And then after that, of course, my daughter had her session, but that was my closure.
Yeah, beautiful.
I didn't need a phone call. I didn't need a letter from him. That was like, got it. I'll take it from here. We're still going to be doing this together. You're going to be somewhere else. I'm going to be here. But thank you for the acknowledgement. We're good.
Yeah.
You know?
Beautiful.
And it was so healing also for my daughter because that was confirmation that I am talking to my dad right now. Because that is the evidence, right? Because you always think like, okay, tell me something that nobody knows. What color are my underwears? Or kind of like things you want to tell to see if they're fooling you or something like that. So that was incredibly powerful for us to go through that experience. What is another way that somebody that doesn't have access to something like this, what's another way they can utilize to have that closure?
I talk about creating what I was saying earlier, like a living amends. People say, write a letter, keep the letter, shred the letter, do the letter. I think it's really what I found to be most helpful is to go somewhere that you feel connected to earth or connected to them and just sit for a minute. And again, I do believe that when we're really connected to someone, we know in our hearts, like what they'd say, what they feel. And just sit for a minute, just be quiet for a minute and just bring them into your mind, into your soul, and just have a conversation. They will answer and you'll feel it in your heart and you'll know. And I think it's just about being quiet. If you need to apologize for something, apologize. If you want them to apologize to you, ask them. If you want to say, are you proud of me? Ask them. They'll talk to you. You'll feel them. You'll know. And don't talk yourself out of it. Like, oh, I'm just making it up. This is what I want to hear. Settle in. People ask me all the time, what happens when we die? I don't have the answer to that. But I do know that I've talked to enough people that are dying and have died and been revived that something happens out of here, okay? I'd be ignorant to think otherwise, okay? So I don't know what happens, but something happens and their energy, their soul, their understanding, it's still there. It's still there.
Yeah, and if you look for signs, you will find those signs.
Ask for them specifically. Specifically, people are afraid to specifically ask because they don't want to be disappointed if it doesn't happen. And I also say be patient with the dead because
they have a lot of time.
Don't you remember Ghost? Patrick Swayze, it took him a minute to move that penny, okay? They've been dead a day and they haven't come to me. I'm like, they probably don't even know they're dead yet. Be patient with the dying. They're also somewhere else. Oh,
Exactly.
yeah.
True. That's so true. Oh my God, Tony, this has been so enlightening. I had so much fun, so much fun
Me
in a
too.
good way, learning and going through this. And I hope everybody that is listening learns something
Absolutely.
and give yourself grace. We don't know what we're doing. We don't know what we don't know until we know. And this has been so juicy. I'm so grateful to have you on the show. Do you want to add anything?
Just want to remind everybody that you're preparing for something you don't even know you're preparing for. So just be present. You're not alone, and just keep going. You can grieve and live at the same time. They can coexist.
That's beautiful. And I'm going to read the last part of that sort of poem that I wrote
Mm-hmm.
because I want to give the audience permission to grieve what they didn't have.
Great. Yeah.
And it starts with a question. How many times in our lives did we not allow ourselves to grieve? The childhood we didn't have, the love we hoped for but never received, the safety we needed but never felt, the dreams that were abandoned. We move forward, we become strong, we survive. But sometimes survival means we never stop long enough to feel. Grief is not only about what we lost, it is also about what never had the chance to exist. And when we finally allow ourselves to feel that grief, something unexpected happens. We don't become weaker, we become whole. I hope you like this. I'm going to have it in the description of the show. Again, I want to invite everyone to sign up for my newsletter. Every week, I talk about the episode. I share something about my life, information about my guest, the takeaway of the episode. And I'm trying to create a community that holds space for everyone that needs it. So thank you so much, Toni, again for being here.
Pleasure's all
And
mine.
thank you, everyone that took the time to listen to this episode. Until next time. Thank you all for listening to the Don't Shrink to Fit podcast. If you like this episode, please write a juicy comment below and subscribe to my podcast. Remember, we can only fly if we embrace each other. Until next week, be happy, be safe, and be kind to yourself.